time out of your schedule just to tune in today, and we hope it's a huge help to you. This is really a part two of a two-part series on launching a campus or starting a campus out of your church. And part one, let me just hit a couple things we talked about in part one. And Kirk and I did that probably about 6 to 8 weeks ago. And you can go on our website if you missed that, and you can rewatch it. Always in our resource library of LeaderCasts. You can watch the 101 version of this. In that, we talked about a couple key things. We talked about our launch timeline, really kind of a best timeline that we've found at River Valley, because we've done really short timelines and little bit longer.
Shorter than short.
Shorter and shorter than short. But we really kind of said, hey, here's a 12-month timeline to give enough time for a campus to really kind of get going and kind of be the groundswell before the launch. And so we put that timeline out there as well and talked about that last time. We also talked about a little bit of our financial structure and how we fund campuses and things. So if you missed that, I encourage you to tune in and check that out later. Today, we really want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more of the community awareness and really the development that you have to do in launching a campus of people and teams and some of those aspects. So what we're going to do is just kind of talk about a few things. Kirk and I will talk about a few things. And we'd love to just take your questions. So we'll maybe talk for about 15 20 minutes here a little bit about some of the stuff that we've experienced and learned along the way. But then we want to hear from you guys and answer any questions you guys have. One of the things, Kirk, that I think we always have to battle and you have to work on going into launching something new like a campus is building community awareness and building really kind of a sense in the community that, hey, we're coming in, we're here to support, be a part of the community. Can you tell us a little bit, as you launched our Minneapolis campus, I back in the day launched our Burnsville campus. Tell me, like, what are some of the things in your mind that were important for you guys or were kind of key moments for you guys to build awareness in the community?
That's a great question. And I do want to say welcome to everybody listening, and thanks for joining us, and really excited. I don't know who all of you guys are, but yeah, really appreciate having you guys a part of our network. And Pastor Don Champion is the coolest. And before he was leading our network, what he just said, he was a campus pastor. And so for myself, my wife and I, we stepped up and launched our Minneapolis campus 2 years ago. So for those of you that weren't at the last one, 2 years ago, actually yesterday, we celebrated our 2-year anniversary as a campus. And it's been just the greatest 2 years of our lives in ministry. Just obviously a lot of things to celebrate and a lot of challenges as well over those 2 years. But it has been the greatest adventure in ministry of our lives. So we love it. The question about community is really important. We felt, especially when we started, we felt like we were just kind of making it up as we go. One of the things we said last time is you think maybe River Valley kind of gives you a binder of like, hey, here's the 3-ring binder. Here's how you launch a campus. This is the strategy. Go for it. But there is no binder yet. So we're still building.
This is the binder right here. You guys are a part of the binder, things that we're putting down that are important for our launches.
So we really, there's a lot of strength of being a part of River Valley and being multi-site already, things that we had learned. So I don't mean to say we went in from scratch, but we did have that feeling of man, we're going into this city. And even though we have the support of the church, my wife and I were kind of on our own. So what are we going to do? How are we going to get involved? How are we going to meet people? Part of that, which we'll talk about later, is building our staff team and kind of our core group of leaders. In the community, though, we really want to start to understand the city that we're going into. For us, it was Minneapolis, understanding the demographics of the city, understanding the people of the city, the culture of the city. I think you can read about it on Wikipedia, but then it's another thing to actually be in that city, spending time with people, having conversations. What is your experience? What is that like? One of the things for us, this was our 8th campus. And so as our church has grown, there have been a bunch of people that were living in Minneapolis that were traveling to some of our other campuses. And we had that information, data that we were able to mine. And so one of the things that we did early on is set up just within our database, a 3-mile radius from the center of Minneapolis and a 5-mile radius from the center of Minneapolis, and finding out who already attends our church lives within those 3 miles or within those 5 miles. And so we were able to compile that list of names and start to communicate with them early on, even before we were announcing social media. I think it had been announced to the church that Minneapolis was coming. There wasn't any detail to when, but we were able to start communicating via email with that list of people. Hey, just so you know, you live in Minneapolis, we're starting Minneapolis, you're gonna have the inside track. And so if you're a church that's already multi-site and you might have people that live in the city you're going to, that's a great way to start to kind of build your community, start building your teams, finding your leaders. The people that already love your church, go to your church, drive 20 minutes to another campus, maybe they'd be our greatest leaders. And that was the case for us. And so that was one angle of starting to build a kind of a mailing list, build prayer support, and start looking into the community. How can we start engaging the community as we get ready to have some interest meetings and launch our campus?
I think like one of the key pieces, and you just mentioned it right there, is developing kind of a prayer list or a mailing list, if you will. And Kirk's right. The strength of multi-site is that you can often look within your own list of people and say, hey, who lives in proximity to where we're going to put a campus? But then beyond that, you start to get a team that's saying, hey, we're going to do this, or it's going in the community. You can start to develop a list of people in the community and say, hey, we're going to start a church here. You might be in a coffee shop having a conversation, and you could essentially say, hey, can I add you to our mailing list? Would that be cool? Yeah. And most people are really open to the idea of like, yeah, especially if it's digital, if it's just put your name and email, and that way you could add them to, and you could just say, hey, can I keep you updated with everything that's going to happen with our church? And it's a great way, whether they're Christian, non-Christian, it's a great way to build a list of people that you can communicate to about the launch of your church. Now, on the backside, you can use that for your team. Then, and the team that's launching, you can say, hey, this is a prayer list. Let's pray over the people that are on our list right now. They could be part of our launch. Some of them are very far from God. It's this person that is a barista in the coffee shop, or this guy I met in the park, or, and these different types of relationships that your team is all out there building, or the people that are working in your launch, they're out there already interacting, maybe even at work or in natural parts of their everyday life at the grocery store, or whatever, in the community you're going to be in. They have now a talking point as they're talking to people, and they have an action point just to collect some information to communicate with them.
One of the things we did a year into our campus that I wish we would have done earlier is really talking about, we kind of coined it within our own team. So it might have a better saying this, but we're just talking about R12. So it was at a staff retreat, Minneapolis campus staff retreat, where we were talking with the staff saying, and who are your 12? Can you list 12 people or 12 couples that you are in your life that you feel a responsibility to pour into, to mentor, to coach, to disciple, and are you training them to have their 12? And so we did have that exercise a year into our campus, and we were able to write down over 100 names of like, okay, we've got 100 names here, and are we coaching those 100 people to have their 12? And I think if we would have done that earlier on, it would have been more of a strategic approach to, okay, who are kind of the people that we see as exciting, up and coming potential leaders of our campus. And then the other thing too, with like mailing lists, you want to join our mailing list, something like that, in an urban environment, that is a little bit more challenging. And so we've utilized social media as kind of like a mailing list. Who is following? We have our own campus Instagram account and Facebook, and some of our other campuses just do Facebook. And so for us, it wasn't as much of a mailing list that was being built, but it was building people that were following our account accounts, and okay, who are those people? How can we interact with them even through social media? And then the kind of the more mailing list or database side would be every time we were doing an interest meeting leading up to our campus. We did 3 of them, and then we did a preview service, and then we launched. Every time we did an interest meeting, we were collecting information. So who are you? What's your email? If you want to give us your phone number, that's great. And even what teams are you interested in serving on? Because that's another thing that we'll talk about a little bit is the importance of building teams as you get going. But so it was collecting information at the events that we were hosting before launch, and it was also starting to get stuff out there on social media and see who is following us. Do they live in the city? Are there potential people that would want to be a part of our church?
Let's talk about, I think in the 5 years ago, we planted Burnsville campus. Minneapolis is just hit 2 years. Congratulations on that. And let's just talk a little bit about that social media aspect, because I feel like that's something we've gotten a lot better at River Valley Church. And I think what Minneapolis has done has been super successful in creating a first impression for people before they ever show up at the church of what they can expect.
Yeah, social media is not going away. So I think that's pretty clear. If anything, it's continuing to grow exponentially since I think 2007 is when Twitter, maybe 2005, I don't know. But I would say it's super important. It's not make it or break it, or you're not going to have a successful campus launch if you don't do social media. But I would say it is up there as really, really important. And that's one of the reasons we fought specifically for that Instagram account, because we feel like in an urban environment, especially, that's kind of the first place people go. We just did a message. We're starting a series at our church called Known. And Pastor Rob talked a little bit about social media and how it's the first thing we look at when we wake up, the last thing we look at before we go to bed. And when something is taking the place of the first thing you look at in the morning and the last thing you look at before you go to bed, I think the church needs to be in on that. I think if that's what people are looking at, let's be there. Let's try to meet them there. And so that was our goal, is to start engaging with people. And so it's a super important thing. If you guys want to see an example of how a campus within a multi-site church does social media, you can follow River Valley MPLS on Instagram, and you can see some of the 2-year celebration that we did, even on the Instagram stories and stuff like that. So that's an example of, we are one church, multiple locations. So we've got our own church account, but then this is an example of what a campus can do within a multi-site church.
Yeah, and I feel like you guys do a good job of, you're not just repeating the same things the church account is saying. You're saying things that are specific to your community or specific to your campus, and speaking to the people there and challenging them in a unique way. You're not just promoting, hey, here's the next sermon series. You still mention those things, you still do that, but you have it provides a more specific communication channel to people in your
there are parameters that we've kind of our communications team has drawn up of everything that we post on social media for River Valley Minneapolis, that should be photo based rather than graphics based, and let the communications department be who is creating graphics. And because then you're dealing with, are you using the right font, are you doing all this, and then we don't have to focus on building a design team within our campus or anything like that, paying staff like that. We let our communications. So when you look at it, you'll see photos of what it looks like to be a part of Sunday mornings, but also our life groups, serving in our local service projects. And then anything that would be more graphics based on there would be something that it has been pumped through by Central that needs to be communicated house-wide.
So good. So good. Let's kind of shift off of social media. And before we do, let me mention, we do have a leader cast on developing a social media strategy that Darren Lee, our communications director, did just last month. So if you'd love to check that out.
He's a genius.
He's a smart guy, and he'll help you if you guys don't have anything specific to your whole strategy as a church. I would recommend checking it out and at least getting going in that area. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of local. For us, we have a ministry or area ministry we call local projects, which is more of our community outreach. Talk about some things you did leading into your campus launch that got you out in the community, exposed you guys to new people, invested in your community. I mean, are there a couple of those that come to mind for you?
Well, yeah, for sure. All of our interest meetings were in the city that we were starting. So it would have been easy to do it at another campus because a lot of the people that are interested in becoming a part of our campus had already been going, like I talked about earlier, had already been going to our church. But we wanted to be in the community right away. So we were renting, it cost money, all that stuff. But it didn't matter for us. We wanted to be in the city that we're going to start, because it's way easier to cast vision of let's reach this city when you're in the city. It's a little bit more difficult when you're down in a suburb and we're thinking let's reach Minneapolis, but we're like 30 minutes away. So
yeah.
that was one of the reasons I would do, if I was doing it again, all of the interest meetings again would be in the city that you're going to. But in the area of local service projects, we felt really passionate, and this came from Pastor Rob even, that before we do a service on Sunday, we would like to be serving the city that we're going into. So we're not just a church that is about giving you the product of Sunday, because that it can feel a little bit weird, but let's start serving the city right away, even before we have our first Sunday service. And so as we're building our teams and with interest meetings, we partnered with the city on the largest downtown city council event that they do. It's called the Aquatennial. And I think we were able to get 40 people to be there. So we had 40 people come, and we all served together for this event for the city. And we did a bunch of stuff. Whatever they told us to do, we were doing, and it was all day long. It was an amazing time of building team and unity within those 40 people, but it was also great partnership. We actually, I don't know if you know this, we got voted. They do like an awards after that event of like number one volunteer group or team or whatever.
Yeah.
They sent us a trophy. So before we even started our campus, we had a trophy that said River Valley, Minneapolis.
You're already winning.
Volunteering. Yeah, you're winning. So when you can serve in your city,
you win.
Not just before, but ongoing. And so another thing that we've developed over time that I wish we had done earlier, we call it Adopt a Block. You can call it whatever you want, but sometimes it feels a little bit overwhelming. Okay, what organization are we going to partner with, or what school are we going to go into, or what, how can we find these projects? And we just started this Adopt a Block at the beginning of summer, and we did these monthly events that we'll continue to do, where we meet in one location that is secure to us, like where we know we're going to have it every time. It's cheap or free, and we meet there with everybody. We serve coffee and donuts or bagels or something like that. We come, we have a time of worship real quick. We pray together before we go out, and we explain, hey, we've got 2 different block options for you to serve at, or 3 different block options, or 5 different block options, depending on what you can kind of develop with a local service projects team. And so I think this last one, we had 4 different options, and one of them was you're gonna hang here, you're gonna make sandwiches, you're gonna write little letters of encouragement to people, put them in a lunch bag, and you're going to go deliver the lunch. Another one was we're just showing up to a laundromat. We're not getting anybody's permission. We're just showing up to a laundromat with rolls of quarters, and we're paying for everybody's laundry. And we're bringing coffee and Gatorades. That's easy. You don't have to partner with an organization or anything like that. Just walk into the laundromat. We took over this laundromat. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
And there's kids there. There's families there.
That's cool.
It was amazing. And another one is like we just went and cleaned up a park. We didn't ask the city about that. We just went and cleaned up the park. And there's cool things within the city of Minneapolis. Maybe your city would have the same, where you can request garbage pickup. So if you know you're gonna bring a group to a park and you're gonna do a bunch of cleanup, Minneapolis will actually send out a truck driver to go pick up your garbage bags. So you just leave the garbage bags there, and they'll pick up the garbage bags because you're helping clean up the city. So different fun things like that don't take too much organization, that really can make a big difference in the city. And so we're going to continue to do that every month. And then little things too, as the campus started. collecting different items. That's easy. As school gets started, collecting items for kids going back to school, backpacks, things like that. We always do Operation Christmas Child every year, something called Angel Tree, and giving gifts for kids that have lost their parents or parents that are incarcerated. So different projects like that really make a difference in the community.
I've always thought, like, and when we launched our campus, it was like, what are the things that are going to like meet the need in the community or going to help like create more exposure, and we're going to be in proximity to a lot more people than we normally are. We did things that we served our community they do a kind of an annual parade and like carnival. Actually this past weekend they did it. They do it every year. So we just did something where we were there serving, kind of like you guys did with the Aquatennial Minneapolis. The other thing we did is this is a very commuter based community, and a lot of people ride public transit. So we showed up at the bus station one morning, passed out like Starbucks to everybody, and just were there connecting with people, kind of just on their way into work. And so we just had a fresh connection with a bunch of new people. And so just to get the word out on about the campus, about the church that we're starting. So look for ways that you can come alongside your city and things that are going to help fulfill needs they have. But then also think about what are the things that we can initiate or things that we can do, the projects that we can start that are going to help us reach out to people, show love to people, and just, connect with more people than we ever have before. And so I think those are all good ideas. So that's kind of our segment there, talking about building community awareness. Let's shift a little bit and talk about what we have to build in terms of the campus community. I think leading up to it, we talked a little bit about this last time, but I want to talk a little more in depth about really kind of the different relationships that you have to think about and or teams that you have to kind of start to build and think about where they're going and what they're going to do. And one of those is, like, depending on the size of your launch and what that looks like, you might have staff that you have to think about or think through, like, how's this going to work? A lot of times at River Valley, when we launch, we have depending on the size of the campus and what we think it's going to land, we'll launch with a certain number of staff, or we'll have some part-time staff, some volunteer staff. So we sometimes get creative in that structure. But then you also have to think through the launch team, and maybe I say launch, but really for us, that would be something we call life teams, which are all of our serving teams for the weekend. And you have to start to develop that core team that's going to help this thing get off the ground when it's time to go to work. It's, and we're loading in because we're a portable campus or whatever, then what are we going to do? How are we going to do that? And start to develop those people. And then really kind of another key community aspect and for us has been life groups. So life teams and life groups are really kind of the core where people are connecting in our church with serving opportunities and community and being developed as people. And those are just a few of the environments that we got to think through. So Kirk, maybe can you let's kind of rewind to talk the staff a little bit. And it can be a challenge when you're launching something new because you don't know how many people are going to come. You don't know what it's going to look like. Let's talk a little bit about how we get creative with staffing, staff meetings, things like that, because it doesn't always traditionally work. The reality is that if you're launching multi-site, you may be saying, hey, we meet every Tuesday, but you're going to launch a new campus and the staffing structure looks a lot different than your original campus. So you have to maybe get creative with that. Tell us a little bit about that for you guys.
Yeah. And before I say that, just so you guys know, we'll have a time of Q&A. I would love to be able to answer any questions or have a little bit of dialogue in this too. So I think at 2:40 till 3 o'clock to have a good 20 minutes of if there's questions and answers or whatever, because I don't want to just talk and assume
Yeah,
that
we'll
we're
go
answering
for it.
people's questions. Yeah. Anyways, staff, we started real thin. Blessed for me as a campus pastor to be able to be full time, and that would be something that we would be open to in the future of starting with bivocational. I've heard Pastor Rob talk about that, bivocational campus pastors as things get started. It's not necessarily a guarantee that you're going to be full time, but for me, and within the model that we have kind of run with thus far, our campus pastors are full-time in ministry, which was great. And then starting with a couple part-time staff, one being worship, part-time worship, and then part-time kids ministry. Those would be the two part-time. And then we started also with volunteer staff. And if we didn't identify the person for this, then maybe we wouldn't have felt the need right away to find youth. It was in the area of youth, and then connections, that's just our lingo for overseeing all of our serving teams, life teams, and our community groups, life groups, small groups, life groups. So we had a volunteer connections person and a volunteer youth person. And again, that's because we had identified two people that were strong in both of those areas that were willing to volunteer. So we didn't search it out.
Yeah.
It was just these people. God brought these people to us, and we labeled them as you are staff, your volunteer staff. So we started with one full-time, two part-time, and then a couple volunteer staff. And that was kind of our initial staff meetings.
It was the exact same for us. We started, we didn't have youth, but we started with two part-time people, one being kids, one being a campus administrator, and worship. And then we had a campus pastor full-time. And so it kind of gives you a way to step into it with saying, okay, we don't know, let's see how many people start coming, what the finances look like, but you can start at least with enough horsepower to get the job done, lead the people you need to lead.
And immediately too, not everything should be carried by that staff team. Everything flows from leadership, but starting, we said we want as many people as deep in this thing as possible to feel ownership in building this campus. And so we just started that way, and it has caused us to, as we've grown over the last 2 years, to continue to run lean staffing wise. And I think that is a win. There are times where the need really presents itself, not as a way to rescue us out of like, man, we need rescuing, so let's add a staff. But we've learned how to function and how to manage, even though there's been difficulty with some of those things. And then as we do that, then we have pushed for added staff, things like that. So our team looks different now, but that's partially because of the growth of our campus as well. So that's how we started.
And you've done it portable without office space necessarily.
Not necessarily with no
office space. So you've met in coffee shops, and you've done staff meetings in the evenings to work around people that are part-time or volunteer staff that are working full-time jobs. And so, be creative with that. When you have the right people in your mix that you want to see develop or could carry a role in your staff, be willing to delegate that responsibility and be creative with the staffing structure, at least initially, to help get things off the ground.
Everybody had another job outside of the church except me. So if I was to say, well, staff meetings at Tuesday at 9:00, you got to be there. That's not really an option or servant leadership. So for us, we did staff meeting at Tuesday at 6:00 in our house, and that's where we met for the first year. And to be honest, it was amazing, and the unity on our team, and we had fun. We'd have dinner. You just feel scrappy, and you want to feel scrappy. You don't want to feel like it could feel real corporate, real fast, and I like the energy of like, we're just trying to make this happen. Yeah.
Like the world's stacked against us a little bit. Let's go for it. But I think what we're talking about here, the underlying principle of this is like, in a multi-site context, and specifically here at River Valley, we it makes you plan for the future. See, you can go into campus launch and not staff any of those things or not think about any of those things. But if you're thinking about them, then it's staffing in terms of the vision and towards the growth. And you're laying out, even though we don't have the capacity for this person to be full-time, we know we're going to need it because of the people that are going to come to this campus.
Mm-hmm.
We know we're going to need it because of the leaders that we're developing and the people we're moving into community through life groups. So if you don't have something like that, lay out a framework of what your staffing would look like. And you can dream a little bit. Let it be like, hey, what are the staff positions going to look like when our campus is 1,000 people? And you can lay out those positions and know who can fill those positions. It may not be a full-time, and it's probably not going to be a full-time thing, but it at least lets you then scale as you go forward into the kind of full staffing model you want to as your church grows and stuff.
And added staff is attendance growth as well as financial growth. It's not just attendance growth.
You gotta have both.
For
us, you got to have both. You can't have just the numbers, but no one's giving. So you got to have the financial strength behind a campus as well. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of life groups before we take some questions. I think community is so important for people to get involved and integrated into, and being a part of the team is one aspect of that. Mm-hmm. But life groups is another aspect that you could point people to really start to do life together, be connected. I know that was such a strong point for us, for you guys. Tell me about what happened with Minneapolis and how that just strengthened your launch.
Life groups was huge for us before we launched. And so one of the reasons Pastor Rob had sparked a vision to do a Minneapolis campus was because groups had been being started. They were growing in Minneapolis. So we had probably partially to do because of our young adult ministry was doing events downtown. We've got a couple colleges downtown that we're in relationship with. And so just a bunch of groups started, probably a dozen groups or a little bit more than that were happening week in and week out without a campus. And then Pastor Rob said, let's do it. So for us, we started strong on the community side. One of the things that we built, and this is kind of the layers of leadership thing that I was talking about, that in the depth of our campus, people feel a sense of ownership is, maybe I'm not the right person to talk about it just because I'm not overseeing all of our groups, but for our campus, we have just the language of you're attending a life group, so you're in a life group. The next layer of leadership would be leading a group, and a lot of you guys, this would be basic, but the next layer of leadership naturally in a lot of churches would be, well, that leader reports to some staff member, and for us, that wasn't scalable long term. So we wanted to have somebody that is a coach over multiple life group leaders, and they're just volunteer. And so that coach oversees up to 5 different groups, and they're checking in with those 5 different life group leaders, or 10 people if they're all co-leading a group, and checking in, how's your group going? Anything crazy happen? Or just anything like that, so that those leaders feel like they're being poured into. Because if you have a dozen groups, one person on your staff is not going to oversee 12 different groups and really have a good gauge of the health of those groups. And so something that we've developed further than that, we just call them lead life group coaches. I know the language starts to get weird, but these are people, and it's a husband and wife couple, 2 of them, that they oversee 5 life group coaches, and those 5 life group coaches each up to 5 different life group leaders. And so that's kind of the layers. That framework gives us the ability to really take care of 50 groups at our campus. And we are launching our fall season of life groups, and we've got 52 groups. So we're going to have to start looking at adding kind of a third lead life group coach couple, to make sure that all of our life group leaders feel like there's a coach engaged with their life, and it's not all hinging on me as the campus pastor or somebody else on our team. This is volunteer led. Through.
Yeah, and that structure is one we utilize throughout our groups, is that the coaching model of deploying people that can help keep some accountability and relationship and, kind of a spiritual connection, spiritual leadership connection with your leaders and encouraging and coaching them. And it's such a strong place to launch. It's such a strong place to launch a campus out of, because you have community people that are already like connecting. And so it's a very natural step that when you're launching a campus, if you can start getting people meeting in life groups sooner rather than later, then you're gonna naturally be able to take the step to the weekend service, and it's gonna be stronger. It's not like I'm just trying to pull people from thin air. It's like, no, I've already developed a core. I developed leaders. They're meeting. They're already in community. So it's a natural like outflow to step into a weekend service and kind of get the campus rolling from that. And that's what we've seen as being a really strong piece to our campus launches, is having community and through groups and teams.
It's great.
Let's you good for questions?
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to throw in there?
Time. No, I think if start with questions, and then if we run out of questions and there's a little bit of time left, I think
we'll just,
if there's any value adds,
we'll just tell jokes or something. Right?
Yeah, it'll be joke
Okay.
time.
Joke
Let's
time.
do that. Hey, I'm having fun.
All right,
Is
guys.
anybody having fun?
You guys having fun? Okay,
Great.
thanks. I see a couple of head nods. So, hey, if you guys have questions, we'd love to if you could unmute and just fire away. We'd love to talk specifically to you guys and hear what's happening in your context and answer any questions we can.
It's a good guy. You're a good guy, Don.
You're a good guy, Kirk. We'll just keep talking until you start asking a question.
I'll go first.
Great.
All right, jump in.
Hey,
What's your name?
Jeremy,
Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy, where are you from?
Kansas City. Well, we're in Lee Summit Park Church in Lee Summit.
Oh, awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Pastor
Hey,
Scott.
Yes, Pastor Scott. You met him. Okay, cool.
Yes. Yeah.
He was supposed to be in with us today, but I think he's got stuff going on apparently.
Dude, he's
Yeah.
killing it. You
Yeah.
guys are doing a great job. Great to have you on today.
Thanks. Question for you. So we're looking to launch a site that's not really that far away. So we're not actually going into another city, just on the other side of the city.
Yeah.
And so have you guys launched a location where you actually pulled from your current location? So like we're hoping to pull maybe even like a quarter of our people to that other location. And how would that play, with your launch in the new location?
Yeah, my location was 15 minutes away from our original campus.
Okay.
So its whole intention was to pull people off because of space issue. So maybe similar to what you guys are facing. So it was like, hey, we have a space issue at our Apple Valley campus is the name of that campus. We need to start a Burnsville campus. Maybe it will alleviate 500 people out of that campus to create more room and more space. And so we have done that with several of our launches and sent people, or they've been across town. And so that's very much kind of that's kind of go back to what Kirk was saying initially, is like we'll data mine, we'll find the people that live closer to that location and go after them and spend time talking to them.
I think language is important in kind of the messaging to your church as well. And I'm not trying to call you out on that.
No, it's okay.
But trying to pull, I think, is different language than we're trying to send. We're trying to send people in so that we can reach more, both in the current location and the new location. If people start to feel like they are now missionaries to this new spot, where we're asking you to step into this new location because you have it within you to reach more people and to help get this launch in strength. And when people start to feel like, it's almost like I'm being recruited to go to this new spot, this new endeavor, this new mission. I want to be a part of that. If it's, we need to siphon off so that we can, I think it is kind of a goofy thing, but it also is really important. Well, I know you're not saying that,
but it's the conversation happening. It's probably the real need happening for you guys.
Right.
And so we always would present that. Kirk's right. We would always present that as an opportunity. We're going to go to another community, even if it's only 15, 20 minutes away, other side of the city, if you will. it's in a different neighborhood and it's in different proximity to different people that you never reach in your current location. And that's part of what you can put people on as you send them out, put them on.
And it is worth mentioning as well, we mentioned the last one, that campus is no longer a campus. So the one we started 15 minutes away, that was the closest we'd ever done it between campuses. And it's no longer a campus because it was kind of like in this triangle of 3 of our other campuses. And so I think one of the reasons, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was your campus. You can say whatever you want. But it was the leadership of the campus. No, I'm just kidding.
Throw this water on you.
No, I think one of the problems was it was truly a lesser experience in the sense of you were at it was the original campus where you're trying to send people to this new thing, and it's at a school, it's set up tear down, so there's portable. That you got to walk through this school to get into this auditorium that seats 500 people, and we're starting with 150 or 200 people, and so it feels empty on day one, like crickets, where we used to be at this overflowing thing. So I would just say the encouragement would be, as you guys get ready to do that even though it will be smaller and even though it will have a little bit of grassroots and scrappiness to it versus the machine of what you're currently a part of, I think excellence is a big deal. Making, like, just having this energy around it, like that people, this is something to be a part of too. It's not a secondary option, because it'll never work if it feels like a secondary option to people. One church that does it well, and then I'll let you kind of finish this question off, but one church that I've seen do it well is Fresh Life Church in Montana. They're in Kalispell, Montana. And the pastor's name is Levi Lusko, and they own the 2 theaters that are downtown Kalispell. It's a small town, but these old movie theaters, they own both of them, and they're on the same street, and you could probably throw a baseball and hit the other one from standing in the original one. So they have 2. It's got to be 100 yards. I don't know. Nobody can throw 100 yards, but they have 2 campuses side by side, and both of them are great experiences to be at, and not one is lesser than the other. So maybe that's a church to look at too. And
you're totally right. You have to, if the closer you are, your quality of experience has to be equal.
Okay.
And so that just creates, like, the closer you are, it's a necessity, because you have people that maybe live, for us, it was like we have people that live in the middle, and they would be like, okay, they'd be pulling out of the neighborhood, and they're like, do I want to go right or left to the campus? Because it's like the same drive. And if their kids are in the car or whatever, and they're like, well, we want to go to there because they have, it's not the portable campus. It's got all the kids, amenities there are and things like that. So the closer you are, I just say you have to have your experience to be on the same level as close as possible. One of the mistakes that we made too is we launched that campus without doing midweek or anything like that, or really kind of having a strategy to develop our own community. We said, like, for all the kind of extra events, we'll go back to the Apple Valley campus. And 5 years later, we look back and like, that was a mistake, because it didn't develop the community and core at the campus like we were talking about earlier. Is like, that's something you have to work to develop.
Whereas at Minneapolis, which is further away, and we don't have a campus within 15 minutes, we don't do the midweek stuff, and that's not a problem for us.
Right.
So you're saying if it's close, like the experience needs to be exactly the same 100% through midweek, life groups, it all needs to be the exact same experience if they're close.
Yeah, I think, and specifically the weekend experience.
Yeah, sure.
On par. There's going to be latitude, and people know it's an upstart, and there's going to be some latitude with some of the other things you offer during the week, and people know, like, hey, they're coming. Sometimes you can be like, yeah, we're going to start that in 6 months after the launch. We're going to kind of go all in with some of these other areas, so you can kind of step into that a little bit. But you specifically, the weekend experience needs to be on par. And what Kirk's talking about is the campus was in the middle of 3 campuses, 15 minutes apart. And we thought, man, it's a new community right in the middle. There's unreached people there that we can influence. But the caveat was the location wasn't great. The auditorium wasn't great. We were portable. And so all those amenities, while you don't want them to matter, they matter to people in your church, especially when everything's pretty convenient for them to just drive 10 more minutes or 5 more minutes down the road. So,
Okay, cool.
A long answer to say, no, we haven't done it well yet.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Any follow-ups or anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I'll jump on.
What's
I
your
wanna
name?
s-
Sorry.
My name's Rusty.
Hey, Rusty.
Yeah, hey, and there's another guy on here, Ben, that's actually our campus pastor. We're we're both in rural communities.
Yep.
Mine's a town of 15,000. His is a town of 2,500. Context is the church that he's going into was going to be closed, and our movement asked us to take it over and potentially launch a second campus.
Yeah.
Have you guys had any experience with that? And have you had any experience with doing anything like that in a rural community? And what would your advice be?
Great.
We've had two.
The answer
I would
is
say
yes.
two.
We've done that. I can start. I guess.
Go ahead, start.
The first time we stepped into multi-site. So is this your first or like your second?
Absolutely. This is the inaugural multi-site.
So I wasn't at the church when this happened because it's 10 years ago now, maybe longer. But when Pastor Rob felt called to do multi-site, he did get a call saying, "Hey, this church ready to basically go under. Can you go and kind of take it on as a campus and see what can happen?" So that was our entrance into multi-site
In a more rural community.
Yeah, and that is rural. So our main location, which we at the time, it's no longer called our main location. It's
Our Apple Valley campus.
Our original location is in a suburb, and it's probably 45,000 people.
Yeah.
That's a guess.
15.
So a little bit larger. That's not rural, but the campus that we took on is rural. And I think just the thing that we've learned over time is that multi-site can work in a rural environment because it is working, and we have reached a ton of people. And our campus pastor, Mark Kenny, is a perfect fit for that city, that community, and he's kind of like a hometown hero in that community, and a person to really look to in times of crisis and times of whatever it is. But there are major differences to the rest of our campuses that I think we do our best to provide a similar experience where you'll walk into that campus, which is rural, and go, "This is River Valley. This feels like River Valley." So you have that same feeling. Maybe it's because the paint on the walls, or because the carpet's the same, or because the kids they really enjoy the kids experience. But then there also might be some differences in that when you walk into the auditorium. It used to have pews, so it was like, okay, there's pews, that's a difference. It has less lighting. We didn't put all the lighting upgrades that maybe the Apple Valley campus has, things like that. But it still has this feeling of this is our church. This feels like River Valley. And then just understanding also the demographics, which we talked about at the beginning, that it is going to look different. We didn't start rural, which that's what you're saying. You're in a city of 15,000 and staying rural. One resource that just throw your way is, I don't know if you listened to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast, but just a few weeks ago, he did a kind of a roundtable with 3 rural church lead pastors that are all doing multi-site, and it's about an hour long where you get to hear these 3 pastors talking about just the challenges that they've had going multi-site in a rural environment, and I loved listening to that. So Carey Nieuwhof is his name, and in the title, I think it's you could just type in rural multi-site and it'll come up.
Yeah. I'd say we did it. We had another campus. It's our Minnetrista campus. It's not necessarily super kind of rural, but it is on the fringe. It's probably borderline because the only reason I would say it's not is it has a little more lake feel because it's out near Lake Minnetonka.
It's a lake town,
lake community, but it is much smaller population. And again, that was a church closure that we took over. Totally relaunched the church, revitalized it, tore down the old building, built a new building on the same piece of property and everything. So we have done it a couple times.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if it helps.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, because I wasn't directly involved in those, but trying to think if we would have done something different. I know that, with a church that is shutting down and you're about to take over, there might be challenges in just those people feeling passionate about maybe they don't want you to take them over,
Yeah.
and push back there. That was the case for our Minnetrista campus. I think it just takes strong leadership. It does take, coming alongside them and understanding their point of view, but also being clear, as much as you want to say we're better together and, we're just coming together and it's going to now be a collaborative. It's not that. It is a takeover. You don't use that language, but coming in strong that this is new leadership. This is what our church is about. This is the DNA. This is the values of our church. And we're starting here. So we closed down Minnetrista for 3 months to renovate. So that church stopped meeting for 3 months, and then it was relaunched as River Valley Church. And I think we would do it the same every single time, is having a few weeks off and then launching.
I'd just say too, I check out one of our leader casts I did last year called Multi-Site 101, and it's things to think about when you're going multi-site.
Right.
To really kind of contemplate, because Kirk's talking about our values and DNA and things like that. And anytime you're stepping into a world where you're saying, okay, we're going to replicate ourselves, you need to be able to articulate what you're replicating. So that one kind of has some things to think through in terms of the replication and stepping into multi-site might be a good resource for you as well.
One thing that I can remember in one of our campuses is it was a church prior, and then it became River Valley Church, but it wasn't necessarily a dying church. This was, I won't say the name just to protect people, but it really, I think from the outside looking in, it felt like this church's DNA is close to River Valley. They kind of understand us. They kind of, and it's close. So we're almost
and the leadership was somewhat close.
Yeah, feel like they're almost us already. So there's no need to kind of shut it down to then relaunch. And it was kind of like a little bit of overlap. What we found out though is that even though that was the perception on the outside, when we did make that transition, we realized we were not close, and that kind of how they function week in and week out, a lot of those leaders didn't have the same lingo, same even energy, and just on Sundays, and we're able to represent River Valley really well. And I think that would be something that Pastor Rob would do differently, is realizing that every church is unique, and so even from the outside it might be like, oh, they're similar, but
when you get in,
totally different. Yeah.
I'd say on the churches that are shrinking or you're being asked to take over, there's a reason why, and there's probably some unhealthiness there too. So just to be on guard and be able to lead through that is important as well. So
yeah, thanks guys. We actually have shut down. In fact, it's by the time it's all said and done, it's going to be a year to relaunch, because we wanted to make sure we got that DNA transferred, because we knew it needed to go to get healthy. But man, thank you for your insight today. It's been incredible.
Glad we could help. Anybody else want to jump?
Somebody started talking.
Sorry, my connection's terrible. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
My connection's terrible. All right, cool. I'm actually the campus pastor that he was talking about out here in Winsboro, Texas. And we just had our first launch meeting this past week. And so we're starting to walk through that and launch this campus. I just wanted to ask what key elements you would make sure to include in those launch team meetings.
That's great. I think, with that, you're trying to cast vision. What is the mission of your church? Why do you care about that community? Why are you going into that community? And, we can always say, we're trying to reach people and all of that, but what is it uniquely, and what is it inside of you as a campus pastor? Sometimes for me, I'm a lot of times trying to portray the heart of Pastor Rob and his vision and who he is and his values. But then it's also, we could downplay our role as a campus pastor and our voice as a campus pastor. No, I'm just a mirror to Pastor Rob. I'm just relaying his vision. But I think that is, it is good to relay his vision and communicate that and to always honor your lead pastor. But I think don't discount your own voice and your own passion and your own excitement and your vision within the vision. Because that's how you get people on board to saying, I am behind you 100%. I would say there are very few people at the Minneapolis campus that are like, I'm here because Pastor Rob preaches this on the video message, or I'm here because of Pastor Rob's vision. I think they value that. They value that because it is presented through the leadership at the campus. But I would say if you were to ask them, they would say, I'm connected to the campus leadership, not to me specifically, but to our team and to our leaders and volunteers. And so don't discount your voice, don't discount your leaders. And so expressing your passion and vision within the vision, don't do anything outside of that. Like, don't say you're passionate about something that your lead pastor would say, wait, no, like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? So it's within the vision of the church, but your voice really carries a lot of weight. And so if you get excited about something, that's when people start to go, I'm following you, I'm in, let's do this. And in turn, when you're in line with your lead pastor, that loyalty builds towards your lead pastor.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't really add anything to that. It's a chance to cast the vision and then enlist them, always end with an action step for them to get involved, to be a part of what is going to happen or what you're doing, and cast a vision for them to jump in, that's compelling enough for them to jump in and be a part of what you're doing.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Hey, it's
Yeah,
3
that was
o'clock.
great. Thank you.
One last question? Anybody want to sneak in one last one before we wrap up today? All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in today. Anything you ever need, shoot us an email at network@rivervalley.org. Our team's happy to help and serve you any way we can. If you guys are embarking on launches and starting campuses, we'd love to help you as much as we can along on that journey as well. So,
And he has to say that because he's the network pastor.
I don't have to say that.
You do have to say
I
that.
don't.
You would get fired.
No, I don't.
But here's the
No.
here's the truth. Here's the truth. I'm just a campus pastor, kind of doing my thing in Minneapolis. But we would do anything to help support you guys.
Yeah.
We would answer any question that you have. It is a part of all of our jobs, every single person at River Valley, to pour into other churches that are asking for resource and trying to help. That is the vision of Pastor Rob. That's why the network exists. And so honestly, email us, ask questions. We would do anything. So if it's a one-on-one meeting, maybe Don won't get them all, but I would meet with any one of you guys and answer any questions that I can, or just joke around with you. Who knows? But this is one of our greatest honor is to build and reach people in the cities that we're called to. But real close to that is to help other pastors build what they're building and called to. So thanks so much for being a part of the network.
Yeah, we just pray your churches, your launches would be strengthened, and we want to see thriving churches in those communities. So thanks for the investment you guys are making, and we're here to help any way we can. Anyway, we're going to tune out for today, and you guys have a great afternoon. Thanks for being with us, and shoot us an email if you need anything. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you.
See ya.